Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Make a Believer Out of Me. I'm Jim Eliason with the San Diego Coalition of Reason. My co-host, Sean Taylor, the Secular Humanist Fellowship of San Diego. Today we're doing something a little bit different. We've been doing a series of interviews with people who are not believers. We think it's interesting to talk to people and find out, even if they don't have a belief, where they came from, where their ideas were formed, any transitions that went on. So we have with us Sleeveless Steve Sloan, who's a friend of ours, and we're going to talk to him a little bit about his ideas about religion.
We should mention his name is Sleeveless Steve because he is quite the amazing magician, actually, and an honest one at that. No sleeves. Everything he does is actual magic. But Steve, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
For being here with us, and we would love to start as always. How did you grow up, religiously speaking?
Yeah, I was baptized Catholic, my grandmother and my father, and then me. But my mother was Lutheran, and initially my parents didn't go to church at all, and then my mother decided when I was a little boy that she wanted to go back to church and went to the Lutheran church, so I was raised Lutheran. Although I certainly identify with my Catholic heritage. I have fond memories of walking the Stations of the Cross with my grandmother and occasionally going to Mass with her. And also when the Catholic Church dropped the Latin Mass, my father's cousin, I guess my grandmother's niece, had a priest that did the Latin Mass in her home. And so I went to that a couple of times as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Wow, so it's kind of like a little renegade Catholic community that my grandmother was part of. And then, but primarily, my upbringing was Lutheran.
There seems to be a lot of renegade Catholics nowadays.
Yeah. Well, this wasn't nowadays. This was back in the 60s.
Right.
Back when there weren't a lot of renegade Catholics.
Yes. Yeah. Although certainly we seem to have a renegade pope at this time.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, in your earlier life, how you went through a couple of different churches. How much did you believe, and what was your conviction towards those beliefs?
Oh, I was very much a believer, to the point of as I became a young adult and was looking for direction, I spent some time at the Lutheran Bible Institute in Seattle in a 2-year Bible study program, which I never finished, but I tried twice. And so I like to say I'm 3 credits shy of a degree in biblical studies, but I took the class.
Yes.
I just never did the final project. But I think also that was really the beginning of my lack of faith.
Right.
Because I was really looking for answers, and they just weren't there.
Right.
I wish they would have been.
Yeah.
Was that a long process, or was there one particular answer that you were trying to get, and from then it just collapsed quite quickly, or?
Well, I think it was a long process. I do remember having one pastor, Knut Lee. They made a documentary about him when he was in the service, Buzzboy Lee. He was known as kind of a barnstormer pilot, I believe, in the Navy. And I remember being in a class where he said, "All Scripture can be interpreted literally, unless it has some other meaning." and I wrote that down really with a question mark. Because I couldn't comprehend it. I was, especially when I tried to apply it to other things that I'd learned in, shall we say, secular studies. That water is always wet, unless of course it isn't.
Right.
I don't understand how this fits in. And then another memory I have at that time was taking class on cults And as they talked about what identifies a cult, I was like, am I like the only guy in the class who doesn't think this applies to us?
Right.
Or who thinks this applies to us? I mean, everybody else does like this. And so that was a bit of a struggle. And then what I really started doing was saying, well, okay, obviously faith just isn't enough. I need more than that, because this is the most important decision I'm making in my life. Why should I be doing it with the least amount of information possible?
Right.
And as I looked and looked to find more than that, it really I just couldn't find anything. And even today, I still ask those same questions when believers in any religion, in any deity, come up and talk to me. I ask the same questions I asked myself all those years ago, hoping to get answers. And as you well know, you really just don't get the answers.
Right.
That it always comes down to you have to have faith. And I just go, well, that's really where you lose me.
Yeah. I think your standard response is, that's not the way that's not the way I make decisions in any other part of my life.
Right. Yeah. I like to give the example of if you took your car to the mechanic and he said to you, "Do you believe I fixed it? Do you believe it's running well? Good. $300, please."
Yeah.
Would you pay him?
Yeah.
No. You would say, well, before I give you the $300, can you show me the part that went bad, and can you show me where you put the new one on?
Right.
Right. You would want some evidence.
Right.
And that's just to get your car running.
Right.
That has very little to do with
Eternal life.
or
Damnation
or moral decisions or anything else.
Right.
But I should also point out, I don't have any bad memories of my time in the Lutheran Church.
Right.
It was a wonderful time for me. I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of really great friends, and it also it was the beginning of my ability to become an entertainer, because when I was in high school, the leaders of the church would turn it over to me and my friends, and we could do whatever we wanted.
Yeah.
And it was a great opportunity to present programs. Now, granted, they were Christian programs, but the same elements apply as to, structuring a show and things like that. So it was great training for me in that regard. It was certainly something that wasn't really available to me in high school. At the high school, and although I was involved in theater productions in high school, it was always very controlled.
Yeah.
And it's very rare to have complete decision making. Where my friends and I had at church, we had complete control. We could do whatever we wanted. We had interesting discussions as to what we thought would be the best way to do something, and that was good too. Learning how to work with other people. So I really have, I know a lot of times people have, horror stories that they tell, and I don't have those. And a lot of times when I talk with believers, they want to think that something bad must have happened to me to be this way. Right. And really, nothing bad happened to me. I have no, I have nothing bad to say.
You're not angry at God.
No, I'm not at all.
Had some horrible experience.
No.
Or all of the things that they always assume.
Right. Yeah. And I'm very upfront about that. There is a guy in Balboa Park that's a Christian, and
sorry.
Yeah.
I think I should explain.
Oh yes. Yeah.
Sleeveless, we actually met you in Balboa Park in San Diego. Jim and I and some others, we have a booth in Balboa Park every single Saturday. Balboa Park is
it's one of the great urban parks of the world.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah,
and it has the highest concentration of museums anywhere in America except the Smithsonian.
Right.
So it's which special.
I do think we cheat a little bit by being there, because we do the National History Museum, the Natural History Museum, the Science Museum, the Museum of Man is there right now, and so on and so forth. But the San Diego Zoo is right there. But we were walking. My family and I went to the zoo one day, and we were walking down the Prado in Balboa Park, and there's just booth after booth after booth after booth. Jehovah's Witness had a booth there. Scientologists were there with their e-meter out. The Mormon missionaries were there.
With their genealogy sign.
Right. And
the Hare Krishnas are always there.
Chanting away and beating their drums, the same chant all day long.
Which is probably why they're the angriest group out there.
Yeah. A couple
and then just random Christians walking around as well, stopping people and talking to them.
Yeah, they've got a couple booths there, and so I said, I think we should show face.
Yeah,
I think it's time.
And then I'm there doing a magic.
That's
trick.
right, and he steals all the thunder every single time.
But the beautiful part is, after the 200 people leave his show, they walk right by our booth. So, so it's actually a service that he does.
It is.
And Sleeveless ends up spending a lot of time with us there, so that's why we know what we say when in conversation with believers and non-believers.
And you have an inordinate number of people, just as a performer out in public, that will come up to you and ask you questions about religion.
Yeah.
Out of the blue.
Yeah. I think part of it is that I'm obviously very visible. When you have 200 people watching a show, people look at that person and go, well, we need to talk with him.
Right.
And I think that naturally causes people to come to my area and then want to ask me questions that seem in some cases extremely inappropriate, and in other cases are just mildly annoying. But overall,
we'll take them all.
Yeah, but I do talk with them all. And part of it is that I kind of consider it to be a bit of a service I do for others, because I know there's no way they're going to change my mind.
Right.
And so the more time I can spend talking with them, the less time they will have talking with others. and I do the same thing for my neighbors at home when the Jehovah's Witnesses come by and knock on my door. I talk with them for as long as they will continue to talk, I will continue to talk with them as well. And again, because I don't want them going to my neighbors' homes and where they may not be as committed to their non-belief as I am to mine.
Right. And I should add about the booth that it's a non-proselytizing booth. It's actually out for outreach for non-believers is the main reason for the booth. And we also have an Ask an Atheist table because lots of people want to ask us questions. So we don't the goal is to reach out to non-believers and let them know that there's a large community in San Diego of non-believers if they want to be connected.
Right, and as you know, that's something that we hear over and over again at the booth. So I didn't even know you guys were around.
Right.
And then when you give them the card that lists a dozen different secular organizations, and they're like, "Wow, really?"
Right.
Yeah, there's a place you fit in somewhere here.
Yeah.
So how old were you when you started to make the change from your religious studies to deciding that wasn't something that you actually believed?
Yeah, it was in my 20s, and I think that a big part of it too was being a magician. In addition to being raised in a faith-based organization, I was also raised in a skeptical organization.
Right.
And I was able to have a disconnect between my skepticism and my faith. But at some point I realized I needed to ask the same kind of skeptical questions of my faith.
Right.
Could you say a word on that as far as the magic community being, from everything that I've seen, a skeptical community?
It is and it isn't. Mm-hmm. There's also the Fellowship of Christian Magicians. And and in addition to that, there are, in the magic literature, lots of books on gospel magic. So how to take a popular magic trick and give it a presentation that talks about
Noah's Ark.
Well, more I would say more about the gospel message,
Right.
really.
What would you say the ratio is in terms of magicians overall? Is it even, or is it skewed in one direction?
I really wouldn't know. I don't know if anybody.
Well, as far as known music,
Well, yeah, I mean,
yeah,
like the famous magicians.
yeah. I think you can look at Penn and Teller, who are
Right.
obviously more not just skeptics, but vocal atheist skeptics.
Right.
And
Well, one of them is at least.
Yeah,
I haven't heard him say a damn thing.
much. That's true. And but at the same time, I heard Penn Jillette interviewing James Randi, the Amazing Randy,
Right.
about TAM, the Amazing Meeting, which is a big skeptic gathering, and Randy did point out that there are people who go to TAM, the skeptical gathering in Las Vegas, that are people of faith.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not mutually exclusive,
No.
even within the skeptic community.
Well, I mean, we go to church every once in a while.
Yeah, but then you have no
Sean and I are big
faith.
fans.
So
And we like the music.
yeah, yes, I do too.
Well, some of the churches.
Yeah. So within the magic community, though, obviously, we all looked at Harry Houdini and his fight with spiritualism, and if you really go back and look at what was going on there, it's very similar to what we've been seeing in our time today with the television psychics
Right.
and those who talk to the dead and things.
Right.
I won't name names because we all know who they are. But Houdini was fighting against that same type of thing, especially because he realized that when he went to a seance to contact his departed mother, he just saw a magic show.
Yeah.
And one of the big things that we talk about in the skeptic community as magicians and even as non-magicians is the use of cold reading,
Right.
as it's called, a way to give a personality profile
Right.
based on what will generally fit anybody, or more specifically, if we can get some details, for example, your sex and your age often have a lot to do with what your important issues are in life.
I find it telling that psychics always start a session by saying, the more you share, the more you'll get out of it.
Right.
Which is another way of saying, the more you share, the more I'll get out of it.
Yes. But at the same time, and this is no way to endorse psychics, but we refer to a certain group of psychics as shut eyes. They actually believe
Right.
that they are
Right.
doing what they are doing.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah, and just to go back to something earlier, one of the Christian people in the park one time was asking me about my past, and he said, "Oh, well, were you deceived?" And the first time he asked me that, I was a little taken back, and I went, "Well, no." And then he asked me again months later, and then by that time I realized, well, yes, I think I was deceived, but I don't think it was an intentional deception.
Right.
I don't think that there was anybody in the church that I grew up in who did not believe and just used it as a way to get people to do what they wanted.
Right.
Everybody was very sincere about their belief, and there was no question about it. But at the same time, just because you believe something to be true doesn't mean it's not a deception.
Right. Right.
And that's one of the things that I think magic teaches is that you can deceive people.
That's
quite
the thing
easily.
that I notice about magicians is that they recognize very, very easily and clearly how the mind works and how you can trick the mind.
Right.
So your sort of conversion out of the religious world, was it personally treacherous for you? Did you have issues with family or friends, or you must have had a lot of friends in the church?
And I still do. Yeah. Although I should also say that none of them are in San Diego. The majority of the people that I was close to were where I grew up in Torrance and where I went to school in Seattle.
Right.
I was definitely much more on the non-believing side by the time I came to San Diego, although I wasn't particularly outspoken about my non-belief.
Right.
it was just something that kind of just gradually went away. And it wasn't until I came back out into Balboa Park and started street performing again, when people started coming up to me and sharing their faith, that I decided to become more vocal. Only because it was almost a weekly occurrence,
Right.
that people were coming up and talking to me, and I just couldn't ignore it. And again, like, it goes back to, I feel a sense of responsibility that if I don't talk to these people, somebody
Right.
who might be swayed to their point of view
Yeah.
will be talked to,
Right.
and I don't want that to happen.
You're not going to be a bystander to
Yeah.
spreading of.
Yeah.
So you didn't have any big personal issues with coming away from those beliefs? You didn't-
No, but I will go back to what you guys talked about on another podcast of the hell issue, and that is a big thing to let go of. To say, well, okay, there is no God, but more importantly, there is no hell. Now, being raised in the Lutheran church, it wasn't a hellfire and brimstone
Right.
church. It was really much more about the gospel, the good news that God has a plan for your life. And so hell wasn't that hell wasn't preached from the pulpit, but nonetheless it was a consequence of non-belief.
Of course.
And so I did have to spend some time working through that, and just, well, ultimately, if I don't believe that this God exists, then I can't believe that there's any consequence to not believing in it.
Right.
And interestingly enough, I did have one of my Christian friends in the park that I talk with asked me just recently. She said, "So you don't believe in Satan either?" And yeah, I tried my best not to laugh at her question, because she was very sincere.
Right.
And I said, no, I don't at all. I have no belief in Satan. But of course, that's what the church teaches you,
Right,
is that
right.
if you don't believe in God, then you're following Satan.
Yeah.
Even if you're not acknowledging Satan, you're still following him.
We had the one lady walk by the booth one time and started screaming at us that we were all Satanists.
Yeah.
I was like, no, we
We
don't believe in him either.
Yeah.
We get the occasional drive-by.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Drive-by theology.
That's my favorite.
Yes.
That's my favorite thing that happens out there.
yeah. So yeah, I do find it interesting, the misconceptions people have, and I know, like, one of the things that I hear at the booth all the time is, so you guys believe in nothing?
Yeah. So if we tell you what we don't believe in, then we
there's
don't
nothing.
believe in anything?
That means if
Yeah.
you don't believe in one thing, then you don't believe in
extends
anything.
to everything
Right.
else, naturally.
Yeah.
And of course there are just a lot of misconceptions, and one of the biggest ones is that atheist simply means you don't believe in God.
Right.
And I talked to a young man today in the park, and he was talking about atheists and materialistic worldviews. And I said, well, okay, I'm going to have to disagree with you there, because just being an atheist doesn't mean that you now have a materialistic worldview. And you can be an atheist and read your horoscope every day.
Right.
You can be an atheist and believe in unicorns if you
Right.
wanted to.
You could even be a Republican.
You could even be yes, you could even be a Republican.
There are a few.
Absolutely, yeah. So people are really kind of confused, and for a long time, and in many ways I still do, I consider myself more of a non-theist,
Right.
only because I think it's a term that's easier to understand
Yes,
for
it's a
people.
much better term. Actually, you bring up a really good point. I mean, in the events that Sean and I do, we always try to clarify the language, because
Right.
there's a huge misunderstanding out there about what these words mean, even among the non-believing community.
Oh,
so
yes.
if the non-believing community doesn't understand what those words mean, then you can't expect the believing community to understand. And
Right.
as you say, atheist is actually not a very useful word at all. It doesn't mean much at all. It's
No.
one particular
Claim that you don't
non-belief.
buy.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah,
And as we discussed earlier, I mean, you don't have the same word for people that don't believe in fairies or the Loch Ness
Right.
Monster. It's just no other subject where you have a word for, yeah, I don't buy that.
But even if you're going to talk about it, as you say, non-theist is a much better word because it covers all the gods.
Right.
It doesn't. If you say atheist, you have to clarify which theism that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. Everybody has atheism in common. I don't know anybody that believes in all of the various different.
Oh, the Baha'i, the Baha'i.
The Baha'i maybe come close, but you know.
Jews.
but yes.
The point being that very few people believe in every god that's ever been postulated, and so we all actually have that in common. So it's important to get the language right and to clarify it when it.
Right. And also, I should be real clear too that the fact that I don't believe in God is just really a very small part. And recently, I was talking to a mutual friend of ours, and she asked a couple of interesting questions. She said, "Can you name 5 gods?" Which was good.
Right.
And I tried to name them all out of the Bible, just because there are plenty of gods.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you can just
Yahweh,
go to
Jehovah.
Yahweh, Jehovah, Elohim are 3 names.
Well,
for,
Elohim counts as more than one, doesn't it?
Jesus, you go to the Holy Spirit, but then you can also throw in, Baal and some of the others.
Right.
And then she also asked if how I identified myself, and referring basically to atheist or skeptic, and I said, well, primarily skeptic, but I would say there's a lot of other things in front of that. I consider myself a son to my mother, a husband to my wife, a father to my son, and a friend to my friends, and a magician,
of course, and African American.
Said the Mexican.
Yes. So I would put all those things that are much higher on my list,
of course,
than skepticism.
Then I don't buy your nonsense.
Yes, and even atheism is just a small part of skepticism.
Right.
It also includes fortune telling. It includes mythical creatures of any sort. It includes pseudosciences. So many things. So it was really interesting to be asked those questions, because as much as I do identify as a non-believer, it's not that big of a deal.
Right.
Did you when you were a believer, did you find it easier to believe in other supernatural claims, or was that sort of the blind spot, was your particular religion?
No, I did not believe in those other things because of my skeptical background from magic.
Okay, so that was the religion was just the blind spot.
Partition.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I just held it separate.
Right.
And again, though, I had no reason to challenge it per se, because it didn't really challenge me.
Yeah.
Other than to live a moral life and that kind of thing, which is a challenge I would still. I still have in life. Yeah. With or without religion.
That doesn't go away.
Yeah, that doesn't.
You're
go
just
away.
told about it all the time.
Yeah. So I did, but I did manage to just. I never put it up to that kind of scrutiny as I was growing up, although certainly as I. Read in magic literature about skepticism and in other sources. At the same time I'm going to church on Sunday, I'm watching PBS on Saturday.
Right.
And so I'm getting an active science education at home, as well as a religious education at home, and the science definitely trumped the Bible. Overall,
as far as interest.
Well, no. I think just as far as
a tool to understand
as
the world.
as a way to understand the world. Yeah,
sure.
There was no way. There was no way that as I was growing up, I didn't believe in evolution. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, in the 60s and 70s, that really wasn't even an issue in the church.
Right.
That's a newer problem.
Woodrow Wilson considered that settled science when he was running for president, and it was either 1910 or 12. I can't remember which.
Yeah.
I think 10.
Yeah, and of course in school and stuff, I studied science as well, and at no point did I ever come home and hear from my parents or my pastor that none of that is true.
Right.
That, the Bible is the real view of how the world came into being. Now part of that may be kind of just a lukewarm Lutheran thing, I don't know.
Right.
But at the same time, there was no question about God's existence.
Right. Well, it's very interesting to see how people apply the skepticism that they do have, because everybody is a skeptic in certain areas of their life. I mean, nobody, when your car breaks down, nobody prays that it's going to start up again. You call a shop.
Yeah, we
But
You give too many people too much credit, Jim.
yeah.
No, we all
You understand the point.
Yeah.
I know Sean understands the point. So but it's interesting to see how wide that skepticism is applied across the rest of your life. And I think one of the things that we've all heard you talk to believers at the booth, and it really comes across clearly, the idea of your skeptical thinking background, because when you're talking to them, that's how you approach it, is from a very, we have to base things on evidence, and what evidence do you see, and
Right.
what's the difference between evidence and emotion. And
and the difference, one of the big ones is the difference between testimony and evidence.
exactly.
And I like to give the example, if you and I went to court and you said I owed you $100,
Which you do, by the way.
which I do, and I said, no, I paid you, and we went in front of the judge, well, you would obviously tell the judge, I owe you $100. I would obviously tell the judge, I paid the $100, but when I produced a canceled check,
You don't have it.
with with your name on it,
Right.
and your bank account number on there, who is the judge going to believe?
Right.
Well, he's going to believe me, but not because what I said was true,
Right.
but because I had evidence to back up
Right.
what I said was true.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you're
And-
very good at coming up with those kinds of analogies.
Right, and that's what I'm looking for. And I'm still asking the same questions I asked when I was in Bible college.
But if someone just writes down what happens, though, rather than just saying it, if they wrote it down and then 2,000 years later someone else read it, that would be evidence, right?
Some would think. Some would think.
Morally, that's as good as anything you get in court.
Cancel check?
And I talked to a young Catholic guy today, and he said, well, what do you want for evidence? Does God need to write it in the sky? And I said, no, I don't need a miracle. I said, really, if I could just see God like I'm talking to you, that would be fine.
Right.
And he replied, well, how would you know it was God? And which I thought was really strange, because that would obviously be the question I would be asking.
Right.
But I think, well, it's God. How hard could it be for God to prove He's God?
Yeah.
Right.
I've had such a difficult time answering that question, because I've thought of all those things. God speaking from then I would be sure that I was just hearing that and it wasn't real. And if I saw him, maybe I obviously ate something with something in it. But
Well,
It's not that unusual.
right, and that, of course, those are the kind of questions we ask. Is if you talk to God, it's called prayer. If He talks to you, it's called delusions.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think it's God. How hard can it be? And
a good answer I've heard is, well, if He's God, surely He knows a way that could make me believe.
How hard would it be? I'm not asking for anything. I'm not asking for writing in the sky.
Right.
I'm not asking for a burning bush that speaks.
Which is not a very good magic trick.
Yeah. How hard could it be if you're an all-powerful deity to prove your existence to people?
Yeah.
We shouldn't have to have a philosophical discussion.
You have an interesting approach to that question when people say, well, I believe it's true, and so you talk to them about the beliefs of, the Hare Krishnas and the Buddhists and all the other people in the park who have those same feelings, and how do you how do you differentiate that? How do you find evidence there?
Right, and that's what I'm looking for is this, what is the standard? Because obviously, we talk about feelings. Well, I felt God work in my life, and I say, well, you see those Hare Krishnas in those saffron robes? They tell me the exact same thing, that they have felt Vishnu working in their lives. They felt Krishna in their lives. They have multiple gods that they felt. Do you think they're right? No. Well, then feelings isn't the standard, is
Right.
it? I'm not to say that your feelings aren't valid, but we need something else. If one person's feelings convince you it's
Of
true,
one God.
and another person's feelings you totally dismiss as being untrue.
Right.
I think one of the most telling things, I've always reversed that question because I've received that question 1,000 times. What evidence do you need? Isn't this world enough?
Yeah.
That's
A butterfly's wings.
It's all I need to not believe.
Right. So I reverse the question. Well, let's say he comes down, he does something, and if I've got evidence, I may not agree with the book. I may think it's poorly written, but if I have evidence that he exists and he says that's his book, okay. I probably still wouldn't follow the guy because, judging by that book, I wouldn't follow the guy.
Well, case in point, we know that Adolf Hitler existed, but I don't think we wouldn't choose to follow his way of thinking.
Right.
Exactly.
So the belief is not
always goes back to Hitler.
well, only because it's still fairly recent in our memory.
What are you?
We weren't even in debate, and we brought up Hitler.
What are you, Glenn Beck?
But there's certainly plenty of things that we believe in that we choose not to follow.
I wouldn't deny it if I had the evidence, and that's the point. And so, but I always reverse the question. Now, if let's say he does come down and he proves it to me, you're here with me. He proves it to me, and you see God, but he says and he does have a book. Everything that you believe is absolutely accurate, except for one caveat. He says it's not the Bible. He says it's the Quran. Would you convert to a Muslim?
Yeah.
And they always tell me no.
Right.
Except for if they're already Muslim. But
in which case he asked the wrong question.
I really screwed that question up.
And I feel that way too. It's like it doesn't really matter if I can prove there is no God, because you're really not going to give up your faith. And I don't ask anybody to give up their faith. I'm not an anti-evangelist. I just ask them the questions that I want answered.
Right.
And nobody's answered them. Mm-hmm. That's the bottom line. I'm more than willing to listen to anybody who says they have an answer, but they, well, look around you. And it's like, yeah, but everybody who believes in a creator says that. So do you believe all the creators exist? No. Okay, so looking around isn't really the evidence. There's something that says that what we see relates specifically to your creator. What is it?
Right.
Or that any of it required one.
Yeah.
That's
a whole nother issue.
That could help.
Yeah, that's a whole nother issue, and I think that's we get into that area of infinite regress and stuff. And I don't have a problem if everything just always existed.
Right.
Yeah.
That's fine by me.
Doesn't bother.
Because there's no moral imperative there.
Right.
It doesn't change how we have to deal with it as it is now.
No. The fact that if a black hole got too close to our solar system, it'd be gone. That's okay, because again, there's no moral imperative there, and we could have a discussion as to whether or not black holes actually exist and whether or not they really could do that much damage if they did exist and everything else. But in a sense, it really doesn't matter, because
other than in the actual search for
understanding. It matters in the sense that we're trying to figure out our universe.
Right. Yeah.
And that is an area that does become a concern for me when we say that things happen because of supernatural explanations. We stop investigating the natural world.
Exactly.
And that is a problem.
Yeah.
Speaking of the supernatural, the show is Make a Believer Out of Me, and
And so
you
let's get to
you
some
just
magic.
agree with us on everything.
Yeah, I do agree with you on everything.
So we have a hard thing for you to do because we are such superb skeptics with such incredible critical thinking minds that that I think your magic is not going to work on us. But
Well, you may be right.
we're gonna see if you can make a believer out of us.
His
We'll probably
magic
be able to
actually
figure
works
out-
on me.
We'll probably be able to figure out exactly how it works.
Yeah,
because
right. Because you've been totally mystified by
Yes,
him every
yes.
single time he's done a trick.
he did
How the hell did he do
the
that?
tricks he did to my kids.
Well,
I'm like,
So let's
what?
talk about your magic.
Yeah.
You were interested in magic from a very young
Yes,
age.
yeah. My father did magic as a hobby, although I don't really have any memories of my father showing me magic. In his nightstand, he had his magic tricks. And as a boy, I used to go into my parents' bedroom and read the instructions and practice the tricks and started performing. I still have the tricks that my father had in my magic collection now.
Mm-hmm.
So, and even in my show, I tell a story about how my father was an influence on me becoming a magician. But very little of my magical knowledge actually came from my father. It was something I chose to do on my own. And fortunately, magic is probably the worst kept secret there is. There are so many magic books. I've yet to go.
Except that Sean and I still can't figure out how to do that shit.
But I mean, anybody who wants to learn magic, it's very simple to learn.
There's a magic book right here, magic with cards.
He's got magic books and still doesn't
on the
know how to
magic
do it.
bookshelf.
and the Bible and
Yeah, this is the matter and antimatter shelf.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that Garcia and Schindler. That's a good
So
book.
we would like you to, if you would be so kind, to
I'll show you.
to mystify
I'll
us.
show you.
Mystify us.
I will show you one of the very first tricks I learned.
and can I just say we have a bit of a studio audience today, so everybody's trying to stay off camera. But I think for Steve to show us this trick, it would be okay if people want to come over.
Well, I think you'll be able to see too. I need to drop something into your chair. I'll get it in a minute.
You should be able to get that without my help.
I should.
As a magician.
This is my first deck of cards from when I was a boy. Obviously, I've lost the box, but I still have the cards. And truthfully, I've lost some of the cards too. But I replaced enough of them that it's still a full deck of cards.
Okay.
So that's the important thing. So I can still do magic with it. And Sean, I'll let you do the first part of this. Would you go ahead and shuffle the cards? Now it's a really old and worn out deck, and the cards don't match.
So be careful.
Yeah, so you
No pressure.
It's not a competition. That's right. Just do as best as you can.
I swear to God, if they all explode on me.
If a chicken comes out of there, I will really be impressed.
Well, and you know, that kind of reminds me of in hypnosis, what people often say, the hypnotist often says that anybody can be hypnotized, well, except those who are drunk, on drugs, or of below average intelligence.
That's why that would explain why I've never been hypnotized. And I don't drink and I don't do drugs.
You only have to hit one of those three.
Yeah, I was just trying to make it clear to the viewing audience which one of those three that might be.
Now,
it wasn't obvious.
Now, I used to work on this with my father, and after he shuffled the cards, or I should shuffle the cards rather, like you did, he would say, "Let me find my target card," and my father would look through the deck, and let's see, I think today we'll use that one. That should work. All right. And then I'll let that stay right there. And Jim, I'll let you take the cards. And if you would, just deal cards into my hand one at a time. You can deal as few or as many as you like. It's entirely up to you. That's it?
That's a
Wow. I like
making it boring.
You're not quite the skeptic I anticipated.
Don't worry, I'll still be flabbergasted.
And then, if you would, deal the cards out into two piles like you're playing cards. Excellent. And then this is my very first magic wand. from when I was a boy, but you notice it's been broken, because if I did the trick wrong, my father would break off a little piece of the wand. He was an evil taskmaster, but it's made me a better magician. And,
So you've got a pretty short wand.
no, actually, it's fairly long. I did rather well.
Okay.
I did rather. So
Okay.
go ahead and take the wand, and if you would,
Ooh.
tap that card. Good. Tap that card. Great. Turn over that card. Good. Turn over that card. Excellent. Tap that card. What number is it?
3.
Yes. What? Tap that. What suit is it?
Well, it looks like diamonds.
Diamond's good. Tap it. What number?
3.
Tap it. Suit.
Diamond.
Do it again. Say it.
3.
Diamond.
I'm pretty good at
Diamond.
this.
Gotta say diamond.
Yeah.
Do it one more time. 3.
3.
Diamond.
Diamond.
Good. Tap that card. What is it?
3 of diamonds. I am damn good.
You are damn good. And the best part is, of course, I don't have to break off anything.
Awesome.
So that's a little magic for you guys. And speaking of magic, I teach a summer school program for academic high achievers, despite whether or not they actually achieve high things. They're all pretty bright
So
kids.
we could attend.
Yeah, well, your children.
Yeah.
Well, not your children, because you have none, but your children would fit, right? I teach with middle school, junior high age.
His wife has 3 children.
But
That's true.
so, and I often get asked by my students, "Are we going to learn real magic?" and I always say, "Well, what do you mean by real magic?" And they'll go, like in Harry Potter. And to which I think, okay, well, you realize Harry Potter is fiction, right?
Yeah, right.
So now this is critical
just
thinking
to be
skill.
sure.
And I said, but to answer your question, yes, we are going to learn real magic in this class, because real magic always has a secret. And that's what we're going to learn. We're going to learn the secrets that make magic happen. And I say to them, I hope that you will remember, anywhere you go in life where you see something that appears to be magical, there is a secret behind it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important critical thinking and skeptical skill that I'm gently giving to them.
Right.
I'm not trying to teach them a course in skepticism. We're there to learn magic tricks and fool our parents.
Right.
And that's what I want to give them. But I do want them to learn to think critically.
Right.
Because a lot of times that's not something that is encouraged in children. Just in the sense of, why do I have to do what you tell me to do when adults tell them to do something? I'm not saying that children should be
Always be defiant.
I'm not saying that they should be defiant, but I think.
My kids are not taking your class.
But I at the same
His
time,
kids don't need to take
as
your
a parent, as a parent myself, my son's an adult now; he's 24. But I always tried to, answer his questions like that, not as him being defiant, but rather, well, what is the reason for me doing this?
Right.
And how much do you need to know? And I know that's one of the things that comes up in the atheist community, especially, is how much do you have to tell your children? And I think it's real important to remember, you only need to tell them what's appropriate for their age.
Right.
And I was talking to a fellow in the park today, and he said, "Oh, you weren't here last Saturday. And last Saturday there was these young kids with big signs about Jesus and stuff," and he wanted to know what I thought of that. And I feel really bad that children are being told to do that by adults.
Used.
Yeah, well, I can't say that, because I don't know the motives of the adults as whether or not they're thinking about using them. But I think at that age, those children don't know what they're doing.
Right. It's inappropriate.
Yeah, and they haven't reached an age of consent.
Right.
I don't know where that age is. Neuroscientists now tell us our brain isn't fully developed until we're 24. So maybe at 18 you shouldn't even be voting.
I'm still waiting.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe really, we got 6 years of voters who are voting with undeveloped brains.
Yeah.
And that might not be a good thing. I don't know. I don't have to make those kind of decisions. But But I do know that, it's one thing if young children say to their friends, why don't you come to Sunday school with me? Mm-hmm. It's another thing when they're out there on a street corner carrying a great big sign that, and I don't think they really comprehend.
It's the yellow signs?
No, they were a family.
Yeah, I didn't see it. I wasn't there.
Yeah.
But I was asked about it because I had recently told a story how a busload of high school kids got dropped off at the park one day, and naturally they came over to me because I'm standing next to a sign that says Sleeveless the Magician and getting people's attention. And the first thing out of their mouth is, what do you think happens when you die? Which, as a man who's closer to death than to my birth,
In other words, in your 40s?
Yeah, I find that's a really inappropriate question to ask somebody when you don't even know who they are.
Yeah.
And so I was saying how I talked with them, but one of the things I said to these young people was, I don't know who told you to come here and ask that kind of questions of people that you don't even know. But I think those are not the kind of adults you should be listening to.
Yeah.
Because that's really not an appropriate thing to be asking strangers.
Right.
I understand that this may be something that's important to you in your life, and I don't mean to diminish that, but if you have a message and you want to communicate it with me, I'm willing to listen. But starting this way is not a good way to start a conversation. Right. It's not respectful. And for you to be asking that of older people is very disrespectful at your age.
Yeah.
And
good for you.
Yeah.
So, Steve, thanks so much for coming on.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thanks so much for the friendship and your magic.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the next edition of Maboom Show.
Ta-da!
It's a wrap. Craft.
You guys